Hi, folks. Welcome back to another episode of Craft on Tap Growth Marketing for RIAs. I'm your host, Stephen Beach, my co host, Faustin Weber. Today, we're going to talk about lead magnets. These are things that people will give you their contact information in exchange for. A lead magnet is something that, draws in a lead and allows for a conversion where they become a lead into your CRM, simply put. So, we're going to talk about the history of lead magnets, the current state of lead magnets, how that applies to financial services, to your RIA, if they're applicable. If so, if they are applicable, where have we seen the best results, and kind of how does it all fit into your overall marketing strategy? So, Faustin, why don't you kick us off with a little bit of a history lesson? I know you're a history buff, so this is
Oh
actually
yeah,
perfect.
absolutely.
Yeah, and so I figured you could kick us off with a history lesson, and then I'll chime in and add on.
Yeah, we thought it was important just to talk a little bit about the history because lead magnet is true marketing jargon, right? Like if you're not in the field, you may have heard it at some point, but it's essentially like what you're offering to convert someone that's looking at your content or someone that's reading your website to give you their email address and their first and last name and anything else that you require from them. This was championed by HubSpot. It goes back 10, 15 years, right? It's a pillar of this entire like inbound marketing approach. This is a prominent philosophy, this inbound marketing piece that worked probably the best for B2B marketing when it kicked off. It's evolved a lot. We'll talk about that a little bit. But HubSpot talks about like this flywheel. They consistently go back to this flywheel, right? Where you attract, potential prospects, then you engage or convert them, and then you delight them, right? So for the attract phase, right? Like let's say you post something engaging on socials or a blog article that ranks at the top of Google. And let's imagine this is 10 years ago when people actually clicked on blog articles. And people are looking for more information. They read it, right? So you've attracted them. Uh, and then the engage piece is where you would have like a nice call to action or something along those lines where you say, hey, like if you're interested in this topic, we have a really good like premium content offer that I think you would find very valuable. And they click on that and then you engage them with a really nice landing page and they end up sharing their contact information. And then you follow up with them. You have your sales team follow up with them on the B2B side, or you nurture them with emails. Um, and then and email newsletters as well. And one of the best examples of this is like we have this legacy client in the manufacturing industry. We've been working with them for what, Stephen? Like, I mean, 10 years now,
Hey,
at
12,
least.
13 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And we still have leads like generated from lead magnets a decade ago, right? And we can go back and see how they've clicked on 50 marketing emails, right? Or they've been on the website like 23 different times in the last decade. And they may not have raised their hand and wanted to move forward with a project, but after 7, 8, 9 years from an initial lead magnet, they raise their hand. They say, "Hey, I have a project that I'd like to work with you with." So, anyway, this entire like flywheel approach of attracting, getting them to download a lead magnet, and then nurturing them is something that has worked traditionally really well over the last like 10, 15 years. Um, and just like to it, sort of tie up the whole attract, engage, delight. Delight is like once you have clients or customers, you're continuing to provide exceptional service. So they end up becoming evangelists or promoters of your brand. They end up providing referrals who then get attracted to your content, convert on your lead magnet, get nurtured, end up having a project or end up moving forward with your service. And then it just like continues, right? Um, so that's something you're pretty familiar with, right, Stephen? Like just this entire inbound marketing approach and how the lead magnet fits in with it. I know that that's
That's
been
what I
like a
grew up
key.
on. Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
grew up on. Yeah. I think one thing that stuck out to me from the early days of HubSpot when I kind of just learned all this via HubSpot, right? I just taught myself this kind of inbound marketing approach. And HubSpot championed that phrase and it took off, and spread like wildfire. But one thing they pushed a lot was inbound is really marketing with a magnet instead of marketing with a hammer. And the idea is that people don't want to be sold to, people don't want to be told what to do or what the right product is or who the right financial advisor is. They want to figure it out for themselves. They need to do their own research, they need to come to that conclusion. And people are smart. They're smarter than we think. So they do have, and especially with all the tools that we have now, they have a lot of tools to do their own research and kind of figure it out. So the idea is attracting them with that magnet approach of like, give them something that would be actually valuable to them, um, and then they'll give you their contact information. You can't have it where you just push the message at them and you tell them, hey, this is what you should do, because the people's guard goes up, and naturally we're just defensive that way. So we don't want to be sold to anymore. It's not like it was 30, 40, 50 years ago when you had a salesperson. Like, people trusted the salespeople before to tell them what the right thing was, like, because the salespeople kind of held all the information privately. And now with the advent of the internet, we don't have that anymore. We don't have certain people who know more than others. It's all out there, so we can kind of
Yeah.
do our own research now as consumers. So yeah, just that idea of marketing with a magnet instead of with a hammer. That one's always stuck with me.
Yeah, and I think, philosophically, we're still on the same page, right? With that, like, we still think that's the most valuable way to approach marketing for your RIA is just to be as transparent as possible and to market with a magnet versus a hammer. I will say that, like, thinking back 10, 15 years ago and where we're at now in 2025, like, things have evolved a lot. It's not so linear, first of all, right? Like, we know it requires 20, 30, 40 touch points before a lead raises their hands and shares their information now. Like, it used to be that you could just get them off a Google search, right? And they find your brand for the first time and they download something valuable. And it just doesn't really work that way anymore. People are much less willing to share their information. Like, you really have to earn their contact information. I think it's just because people have become a little bit more skeptical, right? And they just, they're trying to manage their own inboxes. They know by putting in the information, they're going to get bombarded with emails, and they understand that exchange a little bit more than I think they did, 5, 10 years ago. I would also say too, just like, with all the different channels and how people use social as like the number one thing that they do on the internet, right? It takes a lot more of touch points to be able to get them to move in a certain direction. So it's not like super linear in the sense they just like go right down the funnel. It's more of like a pinball machine. And I think this was Rand Fishkin, who's a really influential marketer across all different industries. Where it's like a pinball machine, like the bumper or items that the ball hits in the machine is like each of those is a different channel for your brand. And the prospect is the ball just getting ping ponged all over the place, right? They see a post on LinkedIn, they read a blog article, they get an email from you, they see something on Instagram. It bounces off all different points before they are willing to, raise their hand and share their contact information. Um, and also, just blog articles in general and the way traffic works now, like this is like a 2025 evolution. um, Google's keeping the majority of searches at this point on Google AI overviews, right? So, whereas you could benefit from a visitor trying to find some educational information, like if you set things up with great SEO and you've worked hard to get backlinks, like you could have gotten people to click into your brand and learn about you. Now Google just uses your information on your blogs and represents it as AI overviews. And I think we've talked about this in a previous episode, Stephen, but the percentage of people that actually like click into one, even if your article gets sourced as like in those AI overviews, the percentage and the likelihood that somebody will actually click into one of the sources versus just feel good about the answer they got and move somewhere else is so low. I think we said like only 8% of searches based on this one study that represents an AI overview result in somebody clicking into one of those source links. So, you know, this is something that I think is just important to make sure that we're understanding and in terms of expectations with your lead magnets and sort of like how you're going to eventually promote them. You just have to be clear that it doesn't quite work as seamlessly as it may have 5 to 10 years ago. Do you feel like I shared that okay,
Yeah,
Stephen?
I don't know if
Kind of
it's if
explain
it's
that?
more complex, but it is different. It used to be
Yeah.
simple, to me, at least from my lizard brain. Like, okay, you rank high in Google search, you earn the click, somebody comes through, they look at your site, they get a good feel for it. they find the right lead magnet for them. Boom, they send you their first name, last name, email, at least maybe their phone number, maybe their any other information you request, and then you can reach out to them with email, phone call, whatever it may be. You can continue to send them messages. They're in your marketing list now, etc. It's not exactly that simple, not that linear anymore. So yes, I agree. It's just the pinball analogy I think is really good. There's a lot of different touch points from all different areas, and they're not, it's not linear. It's sometimes it's kind of, you would think it's almost backwards. So yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
that's spot on.
Yeah, they're not going to jump right off the diving board in with you, right? Just from a first touch. Like they may follow you on social, but it's going to take a little bit more work to get them to download anything. And so we really like keeping abreast with the SaaS companies as it relates to like current trends. They really lead the way in like what's working and what's not, and I think it's been this way for a little while, right? But it then ends up trickling down to other industries. We kind of laugh a little bit like the financial advisory space, the financial services space is probably one of the slower adopters of new trends. So, we're still a little bit behind where the SaaS companies are, but I think it's important for us just to keep abreast of what's happening, right? And right now, the common approach for SaaS companies is to provide some sort of like interactive demo as the lead magnet. So a lot of times it's software that's online, right? And you go in and you put your contact information in, and that gives you either like a trial version of the software itself or actually like an interactive demo of it in action even before you sign up for a trial. There's a big debate right now with SaaS marketers. I think it is relevant to us to think about this, like when we're thinking about lead magnets. But um, you know, seeing how sort of like hesitant people are to share their contact information now, does it actually turn more people away to gate your content? And by gate, I mean require them to put in their information in order to see your valuable content. You know, a lot of people in the SaaS space like feel that lead magnets should just be abolished entirely. Like put it all out there, be as transparent as possible, and people will come to you, right? Ungate everything, put all of your nice, valuable content out for everyone to see, and the prospects are going to respond. If you build it, they will come. You got to love with the baseball playoffs
So
going on right now. A
yeah,
little bit
that's
of
right.
a Field of Dreams reference. But other people think this is foolish. Like you're missing out on an opportunity by trying to ask for conversions because you still can get people to share their contact information. I know I still share my contact information, right, as I'm browsing different marketing pieces of software or trying to find more information online. So you just have to make sure you're keeping all this in mind. Like the current state, I think, is really important for advisory firms just to know sort of what is out there and what our potential prospects, our potential target audience is experiencing. So we're not completely outside of what's happening. Do you agree, Stephen?
It's like when you get if the goal is to get somebody's email address, right? So there's also, it's way more advanced now with what we have for email inbox filters, and people have, Apple has this functionality, right, where you put in like almost like a phantom email address that forwards to your email address, but then that phantom one, you can't, it doesn't reach the person after that. So I guess I'm saying consumers have just gotten smarter. They understand that
Yeah.
if you just blast them with information, and you haven't given them anything valuable, inside of the lead magnet, if it's truly not meeting their need, or solving for some challenge that they have in their head, then they're going to figure out a way to ignore you and ignore your messaging. So your marketing. So yeah, I think yeah, it's gotten a little bit more complicated in that sense as well.
Okay. Nice. So I think that's a really good point. And it reminds me that we should definitely talk about like how important that first email is after you get someone to download something, because to your point about the filters and how advanced some of the apps have gotten, and even like iOS, the mail app, and how it's become so sophisticated with categorizing emails based on promotions versus primary, how important that first email is after you get someone to share their contact information, because that can sort of dictate how your email future emails, your nurturing emails, what you worked so hard to create actually shows up in their inbox or not. So just an important, thing for us to talk about as far as email marketing. Email marketing just continues to be like a continue evolving field. I just saw Steven, just as an aside, I don't want to get too far off track here, but Google is now, I'm sorry, Gmail is now taking the preview text that marketers were able to put into the email software when they were going to blast out mass marketing emails. It's now using AI overviews to synthesize the content of the email and present the preview text in a lot of cases. It does it for you, but from a marketing perspective, that's like another missed opportunity, right? Like, oh man, like preview text was a way I could potentially get them past the subject line to click in. So a lot of marketers are fearing right now that Gmail's just going to, and these other providers are just going to use AI to do their own subject lines as well. And then it's like, oh my gosh, we got to rethink the channel. So
Lost
anyway, it's
control.
just a
Yeah.
yeah, that's just a continued evolving space. Like with the emergence of AI, the financial services space is just in the same state of flux. But it's just something we have to keep in mind when we're talking about things like lead magnets. Like there's a lot of components, a lot of variables at play.
hmm
Okay, so enough of a history lesson, right? I think we've bored people enough there. So the question is, I think, like, do they work for financial advisory firms, right? Like SaaS companies are one thing, but like, do they work for retail, prospects, retail investors who might be interested in wealth management? And then what types of lead magnets? So I think before we start talking about like the specifics, because we do have some examples, I think it's important to this is always something I think that gets lost. Always might be a strong word, but it often gets lost in the whole discussion of lead magnets. And that's, we have to make sure we differentiate between the types of people and the stages of the prospect buying journey that they're on. And here's what I mean by that, right? Like a person that's browsing social media channels or just on YouTube, that's watching content on YouTube, is much different than a person who's actively looking for information. This is someone who's like trying to find out more information about their equity comp or like tax strategies for a business owner, or they're just trying to find out more information about, taxes and how they change in retirement. So those two people are different, right? Like someone who's just browsing on YouTube who might not necessarily even be looking at something financially related and sees your firm's video, that's a much different situation than someone who's actively looking for information about a particular topic. So those are two groups. And then the third is someone who's actively looking for an advisor, right? Like those three different, like where you could potentially have your content or have your website or have your social channel show up for that prospect. Those are three different stages, three different types of information. And so you just have to consider that, right? With whatever offer or whatever content you're going to eventually offer them, they just need to make sure that they're aligned, right? Someone who's looking for an advisor is going to be much more interested in something specific to finding an advisor versus someone that is just on YouTube and might find your video. They're not necessarily going to be interested in considering how to hire a financial advisor, right? So anything that you share with that YouTube viewer needs to make sure it's better aligned, right, with what they're expecting versus someone who's typing in financial advisor near me. Did I do an okay job explaining that? Does that make
Yeah,
sense,
no,
Stephen?
that's perfect. It's in that first case, like the group one, somebody's just browsing social media channels, or God forbid they're doom scrolling on TikTok at 10:30 p.m.
Yeah,
I wouldn't know what that's like, but I've heard people do that. Or they're just watching YouTube videos. All you're trying to do in
yeah,
that case is be like, "Hey, we're over here, come, we exist. You might want to check this
yeah,
out," that kind of thing. You can't ask for more than that at that stage. That's all you're gonna, that should be your goal, is just awareness, some type of capture of their attention, even for just a tiny little bit, even for just 10, 20 seconds. Yeah, versus what you're saying, they're further down the funnel, they're further down the stage of their journey, um, try not to be too jargony here, but yeah, they're looking for a new. Then you might really do well with a checklist for what you should look for in hiring a financial advisor, and we've talked about that. I think just the firms that have been able to do that, and that's really helpful at that stage, right? But somebody scrolling TikTok at night or just watching YouTube videos, that's just casually, browsing through other subjects isn't even gonna sniff that. They're just gonna pass right over that so quickly. So yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's like, someone who's browsing TikTok or YouTube or any sort of the social media channels, right? Like, they're not they're not going to be interested. Like, you have to create demand with them over time, right? Versus someone who's actively looking for an advisor. You're more focused on capturing that demand in some way. And so I just think it's an important thing
Right.
to make sure that you're
You
keeping
you're
in mind
you're
with your expectations and your goals.
you're
Yeah.
trying to capture awareness and then create demand over some time, which is gonna take time.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like
a good
the
way. Yeah, that's
It's like
yeah, that's
it'd
a
be
really
like
good
it'd be
way of
like
saying it.
sending when you load that pinball up, it's like right as you're about to hit the pinball for the first time, like, the person scrolling other and then once they get through, they're bouncing around in the pinball machine, that's when you're trying to create the demand, for them, for their situation. Yeah.
Nice. So you think about the buyer's journey, but then you also want to think about like aligning whatever your offer is to get them to download to the content topic that you're going to promote it in, right? Um, so I think that's an important thing to think about, right? Like retirement is something that everybody knows. Some sort of retirement related uh, lead magnet or offer works best on other retirement videos or posts or content or articles, because you're trying to attract them, to use like HubSpot's initial flywheel. You're trying to attract them, and then you want to try to engage them with something that's directly related to what they're already engaging on. That seems like it is an obvious statement, but we've seen a lot of cases where firms are trying to promote an offer on something completely unrelated to what the visitor is at. So that's just like, in order to be impactful, sometimes you can get away with like a tangential sort of connection, but if it's completely separate and opposite, it doesn't even make sense to promote it. It's almost like more confusing and does more harm than good. Um, a good example, like on the flip of this, is like, let's say that you are able to get somebody who's searching for information about like taxes with their ISOs, right? Their incentive stock options. And you have a nice valuable offer for tax strategies with ISOs. That's like a nice downloadable. That works perfectly, right? Because you know that somebody who's going to the incentive stock options page is probably going to be interested in learning more about stock options, right? And then similarly, right, maybe you have a more all-encompassing equity compensation type of download for all the different variables of equity compensation. That could work well across ISOs, RSUs, sorry, NSOs, all the content that you have that can be promoted more widely. But you can see the connection, right? You can see the connection between the topic of where you're going to promote it and the topic of the actual offer.
Yeah, if you
Did I
put
say
those
that
if
okay,
you put
Steven?
those on a page for, pre-retirees or something about retirement planning, it's not gonna stick as well. And like you said, it might do more harm than good, just confuse people a little bit like, wait, what? What am I
Yeah.
looking at here? I'm 63 and I'm trying to figure out, my RMDs. I don't know what this even is. So, yeah, you could
Yeah.
you could confuse people pretty easily.
And then this like might be a little bit more I don't want to say sophisticated because it's not really, but it's a little bit more interesting, is like if you can try to align your type of offer or format of your offer more than anything else with the platform that they're already on. I think the best example of this is you have long form videos on YouTube and you're going to promote a lead magnet like a on demand webinar or a video series that you gate so that people have to share their information to get access to this webinar. Like, that's a good example of aligning the format of the initial thing that attracted them with the format of that which engages them, right? Because they were already willing and enjoyed the long form video, and you're giving them more long form videos. This is like it fits really well if you can do this. It's not always something that we can consider just because obviously like you have a lot of channels that you want to promote this, so it doesn't always work. But just thinking about the format, the more closely you can get aligned. People, they don't like to leave social platforms, right?
They don't want to let the people go either. That's the whole point. They like to keep you
Oh
sticking
yeah,
on there too. So
that's right. Like LinkedIn or Instagram, Instagram, you can't even really put a link in unless you're, doing an ad. So it's hard to get people to go to links. I mean, you can get them on a story post to go to a link. Then, LinkedIn completely suppresses linked posts, just to your point. So the more you can align the format, it just provides for a more impactful lead magnet.
to
And
me,
then I think
that's
that, this
uh,
is, go
sorry.
ahead.
One thing to me, that's almost like what you said about videos. Somebody's already watching a video, and then kind of your lead in your lead magnet is go convert here. You wouldn't say this, but go check out our on-demand series about RSUs for your situation. Then they go and they put in their email address and they watch the video. To me, that's almost like they're already watching TV. You're just asking them to change the channel. Like they're still sitting on their couch, like clicking the thing. It's like, okay, cool. Now we just go to the other channel. It's really like simple. Like if you think about it that way. Like you said, it's not always possible, and a lot of times we have ulterior motives. We need to move them off the platform. We need to kind of take them by the hand and say, "Oh, this is great, and I'm glad you're here. But now we're going to go over here and check out this new room. Let's check out this other
Yeah.
TV that also has some really cool stuff going on." So there's more factors there, but just yeah, simply put, like for them and for the platforms too, right? They want to keep you there. Like, YouTube wants to keep you on YouTube. LinkedIn wants to keep you on LinkedIn. That's how they make their money, right? That's that's the awareness that they're capturing that then they can charge advertisers for. The longer you stay on the platform, the more engaged you are, the more they can share that with their advertisers, and that's valuable. So of course that makes sense, but yeah, sometimes we have to usher them around the different channels and platforms. Okay.
Yeah, really well said. And I think like all three of these points, right? Like, differentiate between the prospect buyer journey to know where they're at, try to align it to the content topic, try to align it to the platform. It really goes at like the heart of this. Like you got to think about your target audience, right? And what is going to be most impactful for them. I feel like we always talk about this, right? But
Yeah.
it's in such an important component of good marketing. Just always have your target audience in mind, regardless of what you're doing. And so the format in particular is relevant here to your audience. Like, you're going to do a quiz, a white paper, a checklist, a calculator, a dedicated email campaign, an on demand webinar. You got to think about not just the format of how you're promoting, not just the topic, but also like what's your target audience going to engage with. Your early 30s, high earning, like early stage career tech professional in Silicon Valley is probably going to scoff a little bit at your webinar offering or your old school traditional checklist, right? But your retiree coming off of YouTube might really appreciate that, right? And they might actually prefer a nice PDF that they can print. Or an on demand webinar where they can get more of the long form video information. So you just have to take that into account. Vice versa, a pre-retiree might not like a educational email campaign that spreads out over 2 to 3 weeks that they can sign up for. But that's a really common promotional tactic and something that your 30-year-olds, your 40-year-olds really could find valuable. Like as they're trying to learn more and do it themselves, right? I know none of our firms really like the DIYers, but the whole point, I guess, is just to think about the format as it relates to your audience. And that's something that we talk a little bit about, get some more insights from a content perspective and what they find valuable across all of our clients. But Stephen, we usually start by interviewing our clients to try to get some of that information, as well as using a lot of tools in the space just to understand exactly our different demographics and how they're engaging, right?
Yep. Yeah, I think, can I just share one thing of what not to do? 'Cause I have
Yeah.
a fairly long list, but sometimes it's useful to think about, when we're trying to share kind of our takeaways. It might be more helpful just to talk about what not to do, and then it can kind of, the lesson is conveyed. Um, you know the pop-ups that come when you go to somebody's website and it's a pop-up? Sometimes it's just in the bottom right. Sometimes it's on the full page, like this huge thing just shows up within seconds, usually, sometimes immediately, that says, sign up for our newsletter. It's usually poorly branded. It's usually out of line with your brand, like the colors are off and the fonts are wacky and whatever. And then it just says, sign up for our newsletter. I mean, please stop doing that. Whoever's doing that, just delete that. Just remove it. It's harmful. It's harmful to your brand reputation. It hurts me, emotionally to see that. It just pains me. I find it really annoying as a consumer, and so do your prospects, and so do your clients. By the way, who are coming to if they ever come to your website to access a login or, whatever they need to do. Access their documents. They're fine. It's super. It's just annoying. And if you think about it, it misaligns with what we're saying. Like somebody coming to your website, who is that for? That you're saying sign up for our newsletter. That's just for you, right? That's just us being selfish and saying like we want to capture your email so that we can just blast you over and over the next few years. And they don't convert. I know, like for a fact, no one's putting their information in, and it's just distracting. So yeah, that's a good example where we're missing. If you think about what the consumer wants, like what the prospect wants, or even your client who's revisiting your website, what do they want? Think about that first. Do they really want that thing popping up where they have to hit the X? To X out of it, they then go find what they're looking for. No, of course not. It's annoying. So please, just take those down, all of them. I saw one yesterday. It said like, sign up so we can keep you informed of all of our news or something like that. It was just terrible on so many levels, and I thought it was more harmful than good. So I just need to share that. But that's just because it's out of a line with, if you had somebody on your website, if that thing only popped up, here's what you would do instead. Okay, if that thing only popped up after 45 seconds of somebody being on your website, or only popped up after somebody visited 7 pages on your website, and you can trigger it to do that. And then the copy was, first of all, the brand was nicer. It was just in line with your brand. It was engaging, like visually. And then the copy was something better, like sign up for our, or, enter your email so we can keep you informed of, what we're learning about, RSUs for people in your space, like whatever that becomes. That is a little bit more convincing and compelling and fits with your brand probably. So yeah, just think about the prospect in that case, and what they would actually want. So there, end of rant. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, no.
I've just seen too many of those things, and I think it's just kind of killing me on the inside. So thank you for letting me, just get that out. It's cathartic.
Yeah, I think you make a good point though. The pop-ups in themselves are not altogether bad. You just have to be strategic about how you do it so that it's not going to, it's going to only come up at the right times when it aligns with the topic or aligns with the amount of time that they've spent. Those are things you can do versus blasting it to every single visitor,
Yeah, a
which
generic
can,
newsletter, a generic newsletter that I have no idea what I'm going to get out of it, or how many
yeah,
times you're going to send it to me, or what it's even going to
yeah,
contain. I'm not into that. So yeah, if it's something that I'm interested in that fits with my stage of what I'm looking for, then sure,
yeah.
it could be a good tactic.
Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit like we're going to talk about the actual some examples here. But it is important to understand what happens next, right? And to think that through. So let's say that you spend a lot of time figuring out what this lead magnet is going to be. You listen to the Stevens of the world, make sure you don't blast it everywhere on the website with pop-ups, but you think strategically about where to put it, how to promote it, how to do a nice like call to action across the relevant channels. It's important to know what happens when people actually download it, right? It just because they download it and find a lot of value in it doesn't mean that they're going to book a call, which is what we all want, right? So I think, just make sure that you consider the stage of the journey, like with what your offer is. It probably doesn't make sense if you just have like an awareness type offer to build a little bit of credibility with your brand to try to push them aggressively into a discovery call. Um, I don't think it makes sense for somebody who stumbles upon you in YouTube, for instance, to try to push them into a discovery call just because they sign up for your on-demand webinar. I mean, I do think there's an element there of, uh, it's just not going to happen effectively, and you could potentially turn people off. You got to think through how you're going to nurture them based on what stage they're at. So I think that's just an important piece here. Like this is a as you guys know who are listening to this and in the wealth management space, this is a trusting inner circle type of relationship that you're trying to get people to commit to. It's not a $15
Not
Amazon product.
transactional.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it's not transactional. So you have to think about this in terms of what you're going to do next. Definitely follow up, definitely think about nurturing, but do not become like a sales aggressive rep trying to get people to download if the offer it's or I'm sorry, to respond and book a call if the offer itself doesn't call for it, right? I just think you have to make sure that you're aligning your follow up just in the same way you aligned the offer to the buyer's journey. um, and I think just being realistic about expectations, we still sometimes have clients or like newer clients are like, hey, I got 10 downloads. Where are the discovery calls? And it's like, well, those 10 downloads, remember, we're trying to build our audience so that we can boost our awareness within this particular niche. We weren't expecting 10 discovery calls, but let's look at the great signal that this lead magnet offer is showing us, because we did get 10 downloads. They were all, you know, 8 of them, 6 of them were qualified. We're going to have an opportunity with them down the line. It's not something where we're going to be able to, you can't do lead gen on demand in this space. It just doesn't work, especially if they're not actively looking for an advisor. You literally, like if someone's looking for information or they're just stumbling upon your content, you're not going to get them into a discovery call the next week. It just doesn't work like that. Um, and so I think that's just an important step to think through.
Yeah, it takes time. It takes time and
Yeah.
thought and a build out of these different pieces.
That said, you can think about like how you're going to nurture them, right? And so if it calls for it, right, like share more resources to build trust that are related to whatever they downloaded. You can share like a compliance approved case study. Those are a little bit tricky to get compliance approved, but you can do it. If it is like a further down the funnel type of offer, like let's say it's a guide to hiring a financial planner, you can start talking through like common objections on the email sequence, right? And you can push the discovery call process if the offer calls for it. I mean, I definitely think it's good to try to put that calendar in front of them often if they have a bottom of the funnel offer that they're doing. Like if they show that they're actively looking for an advisor based on them downloading how to evaluate advisors lead magnet that your firm is offering, it's a good to try to get them into a discovery call. I'm just saying, don't try to over nurture people that aren't ready yet.
That's like me,
Okay.
if you
And
try
then,
to push somebody too fast, too aggressively, it's like me trying to get my 6-year-old off to school. It's like, okay, put your socks and shoes
yeah,
on, please. We need to leave. Put your socks and shoes on, please. We need to leave. It's not happening. Then I just start screaming at her eventually, just, you got to put your socks and shoes on right now. That doesn't work better
yeah,
either. Like it doesn't work. So same kind of thing. Let them, you got to like cater to their pace and kind of meet them where they are, and generally speaking, you'll have better results. I guess that's my takeaway from trying to parent the 6-year-old. So
yeah.
anyhow,
No, I
little
like that. That,
sidebar.
that, that, that analogy definitely works.
There's a lot there. I don't
And
want to
then,
get too sidetracked in that. Yeah.
yeah. And then like, I just put a little note in here, like in our outline, Stephen, don't focus too much on the follow up until people start downloading. uh I You don't want to spend hours upon hours upon hours and days analyzing every word of what your nurture sequence is going to be if no one's actually going to download whatever you're
Oh,
presenting.
I thought you
So I
said
just think from
if you
like
build it, they will come though.
yeah, if you build it, they will come. But marketing is an experiment, right? So you can take your best guess at what is going to attract people. I just don't think you should invest too much. Like think through how you're going to follow up. I just have a client I'm thinking of in particular, and we just do one-off email follow-ups because the conversion tool is like a little bit further down the funnel, and it's something that I like to research the person to help our client. Like I'm like, okay, who is this person? Oh, perfect, business owner, that they're in their 40s. This is like a perfect client. I help the client construct a more personal email to them. It's not coming in at a frequency that takes too much time, right? Because it's like a couple of times a month. That's more effective to me than thinking through some like incredible automated sequence with this person. So if you can provide like a little bit of personal follow up, right? Now, if you're getting a high number, high quantity of leads, then it definitely helps to have that email sequence thought through. I just think that that's just like a key thing. Like, don't spend too much time trying to get everything right with your email sequence before you publish the thing. Like, make sure people are downloading it
Test
first.
the offer first. Yeah, test the lead magnet first. I know
Test
I was
it.
just giving you some slack, but or giving you some crap, but
Oh yeah,
yeah, you got
no,
to
that's
test and make sure you get a few. Make sure you get a few in there. Otherwise, yeah, you're just kind of wasting your time building something that you'll never use. Okay,
okay. So let's get into some examples, right? Okay, so checklists. Let's just talk about checklists. Like the SaaS companies, they
love a good
hate checklists.
checklist. Yeah,
Oh my gosh, they think they're boring, right? And they are boring in a sense, right? But there's something really nice about a checklist in that it's simple, it's easy for the firm to create. It's all encompassing upon a particular topic. Like you can categorize and easily like lay out a bunch of information in a clear and concise way that the prospect probably doesn't even know that they don't know, which is part of the value of the checklist, right?
right.
And like people like checklists. So, I mean, I there's a lot of pros about using a checklist. Especially right if you like the retiree audience. I still think checklists really resonate with them. It's still been something that's been valuable across our clients. A retirement checklist, right, is a great way, I think, to think about pre-retirees. It's very simple. It's something that automatically qualifies them as a pre-retiree, right? In a lot of cases, like if they're thinking about a retirement checklist and they download it, you can assume that they're thinking about retirement. So you can cater your entire sequence and everything to them. Um, and then I just think like the more specific, like if you are focusing on a niche, then a retirement checklist can be really valuable. A con is that there's so many retirement checklists out there. There's hundreds of them, but if you can niche down and say, hey, I'm going to focus on, a pharmacist checklist, or I'm going to focus on a lawyer and a checklist for attorneys. It's a way to differentiate yourself by still taking on all the pros of a nice checklist, right?
Yeah, they're. I think
Okay,
checklists can just be clarifying. Just to add to what you said, they can be concise
yeah,
and clarifying to people. It's something you can wrap your head around really easily. Who knows? People might print it off and actually use it as a checklist. So
yeah,
yeah, all the things you said, it
yeah.
demonstrates expertise, but it also can be, I think, really just simple and clarifying, something you can understand easily.
Yeah, because it's easier to get off the ground, right? You can go to market with it much faster too than some of these like more complicated checklists. You can have more
Yeah,
checklist items, right? That you can potentially do. So some other examples like a checklist for business owner tax strategies, like everything related to business owner and personal planning and like how you should think about taxes. That's been something we've done. It's been pretty effective, generated some like real leads for one of our clients. A checklist for hiring a financial advisor if you have stock options or equity comp. So that one is a down the funnel type of offer that you can promote for on equity compensation articles, right? You can promote it across a number of different channels, and it gives you an idea as a firm. Like if someone's you know having a checklist to evaluate different advisors, I can feel good about following up with them pretty aggressively to try to get a call in the books. It also provides a lot of value to that person as well, focused on equity comp versus just financial planners and how to evaluate them in general. Some other examples, right? Like quizzes, just some examples here, like advisor readiness quiz. I'm a tech professional. Should I work with an advisor? That's another good example that's been effective, just at like a nice type form or outgrow quiz. If it aligns with the target audience in the mid 30s, to early 40s, they like quizzes, right? For the most part, it allows them to do it quickly. That can be a pretty effective way of getting someone's contact information and then following up with them with a lot of valuable information about their specific answers that they submitted. So you have a little bit more insight in how they're thinking about their finances. And so you can follow up with their answers and provide more information and resources and topics to them that can continue to educate them.
As a
Fidelity's
way
got
to,
a really popular.
I'm
Go
sorry, I was
ahead.
going to say, as a way to demonstrate your expertise too, and you share that information with them once they complete the quiz, it's like, you're just doing a good job of demonstrating your expertise. Yeah. By the way, Typeform and Outgrow are very simple plug and play tools you guys can use yourselves if you're listening to this. Yeah, you can build it on either of those and then just well, I don't know if it's that simple, but you would grab an embed code and then drop that into your website, and it's nicely branded, and it creates kind of a nice interactive feel to it. Okay, sorry, go on. What's
Yeah,
Fidelity?
no,
Yeah,
I think that's really important. Like if you can brand these quizzes so that they align with your overall brand, it just makes for a much better experience,
yeah.
much better to build trust. Fidelity's got a lot of quizzes on their site, like "Am I ready for retirement?" They're presented in a number of different ways. You can use that as a kicking off point to start thinking about your own quizzes. We do see quizzes a lot across a lot of financial advisory firms. The problem is most of them I think are too generic, and you really need to lean into your specific audience and like how you're going to specifically help and demonstrate, emotional empathy and also expertise within a particular specific challenge. I think most of the quizzes we see are more general, right? And that's where they kind of blend in with all the other quizzes.
Yeah.
Um, Guides, nice branded PDFs, guides or white papers, I think they still are relevant. Best example I've seen of this, guide for a specific company going through an IPO. So the company thought through all the big questions that their prospects ask when going through an IPO, create a really nice branded PDF guide, specific calling out that company and the big questions that they'll ask. And now that lead magnet can be repurposed across every other company. And like there's nuances, right, to every company going through it, but it's pretty general in terms of the big questions. So that's been one that's been really successful. Um, we talked a little bit about on-demand webinars or video series work really well pushing it from YouTube. So something to consider. Educational email campaigns. We haven't really used this a lot, but I would say for like Henry audiences, this could be something that's pretty impactful. This is where people are like trying to educate themselves, right? Like our the millennials, the late millennials, those in their late 20s, early 30s. Not a lot of our clients are going after this audience, but someone signing up to learn more from like a 3 to 4 email series can be a good way to get them in. Any like categories or examples that I missed, Stephen, that would be good to
No,
talk
those
through?
are those are probably the main ones. Yeah, that's good. I think there's a
Um,
bit of a push to have these be more interactive than before, and like I said, the checklist is still valuable. We still use it. We still generate leads for
yeah,
our clients from it, and so on. But there's sort of like this brand experience that you can create with some of these tools, which is a little bit, depending on your audience, you might need to push more towards that. So yeah,
yeah, really good point. I miss calculators. I mean, I do think calculators less general but more specific. Like all these different lead magnets, the more specific you can be to the challenges that are your target audience is experiencing, the more you're going to differentiate. It's just like any content, right? Just think
Mhm.
about your lead magnets based on the more specific and more direct you can be about how you're going to address the challenges, the better. I think that's a really important piece. So, a calculator that has a few calculations, and we've tried to work through business like stock corporate executives thinking about their overall concentration within a particular stock. Calculators that can help state their total net worth, their total assets, how much they're concentrated within their company stock, and then provide recommendations. We've kind of tested that out a little bit. Difficult from a compliance angle, and we can never really get like the calculations right, but just something to consider to your point, Stephen. Like more and more people are looking for that interactivity as a way to differentiate from others in the space. Um, Okay, so a couple of quick things here. I know we're pushing it pretty long here, pretty comprehensive discussion here, but the landing page, right? Like this is like how the page that people go to, right? So let's say you're promoting on YouTube or somewhere else. This is the page people are going to actually share their information. So a couple of like quick tips about this. Make sure you lay out the value prop. Visuals are really like key. Like they need to see what they're going to get, even if it's a PDF or a boring checklist. Mocking it up with a nice 3D visual can make it appear, I don't want to say more valuable than it is, but it definitely helps with the overall like conversion once they get to that page to be able to see it. Steven, I know like ideally it has a video. You have to invest more time and energy into this, but if it's a really valuable lead magnet offer, having like a 1 minute video showing like having one of your partners in the firm talk through how it's going to be valuable, that increases conversion rates, right? What, like 30-35% from
Depends
some
on, I
recent
guess, what you
studies?
look for. I remember HubSpot pushing that a lot. Like all the landing
Yeah.
pages in the early days, none of them had video, and now video is more ubiquitous. So but yeah, the ones that had video, 35%, they converted at a 35% higher rate than the ones that did not. So just for all the reasons you just said, you get somebody talking through hey, this is our tax planning checklist for business owners. We think it'd be really helpful. We've helped a lot of clients that, kind of look like you and they face this challenge, and this challenge. And one first step you can do on your own is download this checklist and kind of, stay organized with this and that with tax planning. Okay, cool. And then it gets you a feel for, your partner or whoever it is, your CFP that's kind of talking through that. It gets you share a different feel for it, I guess, as you do it, and it'll convert higher. So it's worth the effort.
Yeah, I love that. So just making sure visitors know exactly what to expect. Don't oversell, but don't undersell it either. Explain what they get out of it. Um, in terms of like what you asked for from a form, I mean, we could do an entire episode on
This is
this,
a big
but
one, yeah.
try to ask the minimum amount of information, right? So if it's a really powerful bottom of the funnel, how to evaluate advisors, maybe you can get away with asking a little bit more information to help with the follow up to try to get a discovery call, right? First name, last name, but maybe it's asset level, maybe it's years to retirement, maybe it's
Yeah.
a little bit like that. But the more form questions you put on there, the less likely people are to convert. It's every data study shows that, right?
Yeah.
So,
The more that are
you know,
required,
mi-
especially. Yeah.
yeah. So we usually recommend for like middle and up, like anything that like is just trying to address common challenges. The first name, last name, and email address is like the bare minimum that you can really get. Start to nurture them, follow up with them, and usually, especially if it's like a business owner, you can usually find them on LinkedIn and get the information you need anyway.
Yeah,
Um,
that also depends on your lead flow, I'd say too. If you're getting 100 leads a month from that
yeah.
one lead magnet,
Oh yeah.
you can start to be more picky and add more. James Knoll talked about this on the Kitsy's podcast recently. So it was just he was just saying, yeah, we had so many that we had to start being more picky, basically, and so he added more fields and then made some of those required. And now they've got more information about the prospect, but they're choosing really to turn away the prospects that are less qualified, and that's okay. It's like, because those prospects wouldn't be a good fit for their firm anyways. So you're just kind of doing that on the form and kind of turning people away at the form. It's like a bouncer at a bar, right? Like you're picking people and saying only you can come in. So you got to be careful if you don't have any leads right now, if you're not converting anything, keep it as minimal as you can,
Spin it
like you
up.
said.
Fill
Huh?
up the bar.
Yeah,
Fill up the
we got to
bar.
get the
That's what you
bodies in
need.
here. We got to get some heads in here.
Well, you can
Um,
feel better about you can feel better about filling up the bar, right, with less form questions if you've been more qualifying with the actual lead magnet itself, right? Like going, if
that
I'm
too.
creating
Yeah.
a retirement planning checklist for pharmacists who are 10 years out from retirement, Fisher does a nice job with this, right? Like you see all the investment promotions for their guide to, someone who's has over a million in assets and is 5 years from retirement. You can be a little bit less diligent about the questions you ask because they've already in downloading it given you a little bit more
Signaled
of
that.
a
Yeah.
probability. Yeah, they've
Yeah.
signaled that. Yeah, even
Yeah.
though a lot of the leads that come in through those ads are just complete garbage, but that's a time for another
That's
day.
something else. Yeah.
Um, and then last thing with the landing page, just like an action step, like don't just do submit, get that checklist, watch the video, some sort of action oriented step to get them to cross the finish line. Believe it or not, that does make a difference.
Right.
Um, All right, so Steven, last step is like, how do you promote this? And just like a quick hitter, right? Like you've developed your lead magnet, you've thought about your landing page. Um, go, I would say like, you can go crazy with the promotion of it, right? Like spotlight it in your next newsletter if it's sent to people where it's going to resonate. Put it in all of your future newsletters as like a smaller module to make sure you draw people back to it as much as you can. Put it in the top of your social link tree on Instagram. Put it as a custom link on LinkedIn. Send it to anybody currently in the sales pipeline that you think it could be valuable to, like you just on a one-off approach. Consider like promoting it as an ad on an Instagram video if it is going to align with your target audience, right? Like you can link from an Instagram video to the landing page versus you can't just do that on an organic post. So it's I do like a good ad to build your audience or awareness. We've talked a lot about how we don't like pay-per-click ads to try to capture demand from people searching financial advisor near me, but I do like a good audience building conversion ad, right? That you can run to sort of populate across a relevant channel. Put it in your email signature, share it in relevant YouTube descriptions. I think social posts, right? Like we've talked about, you're going to be penalized if you try to link too much to it. I don't like the engagement ransom technique, and also it doesn't really work a lot for our clients who have like an audience of a lot of times an audience of all sorts of different types of people. So it doesn't even the engagement ransom. I mean, like comment if you want to download this, and everyone comments, and then you like follow up with them. I don't really like that approach, but I do think promoting it on socials a couple of times a month can be like an effective way to draw people's attention back to it. Did I miss anything in terms of like how to
No,
promote?
I'll just say for that, again, depends on your situation. But if you don't have an audience yet that you're promoting this to, you're gonna be casting this lead magnet out into a void, or putting it out into it's like a billboard in a desert, right? There's only four cars that drive by it every day, and they might not.
Yeah,
Most people just aren't gonna see your billboard, even though it's a beautiful billboard. So I'll just say that it depends on, how much traffic you're getting and where you're going to put it. But, be careful about that too, because if you're just constantly throwing right hooks, you're going to wear people out. So another HubSpot silly analogy that's stuck with me is it's kind of like you kind of want to embrace the jab, 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 hook methodology, which is like the jabs are just like sharing educational, informational, helpful content to your target audience on the platforms where they want to be, where they already live. And then, after you've worn them down with the jabs, and again, I don't want to like portray this like we're fighting our prospects, but after you've given them some little jabs, some pieces, then you can throw a hook, and that hook would be the ask for their information with the lead magnet. So that has also stuck with me. You can't just go into a ring unless you're Mike Tyson and throw constant hooks. Like that's not going to be a good a good mentality for you. So think of, if you have the audience already and they're ready to convert, that's great. Most people don't. Most firms don't. They have to start with jabs, and they have to
yeah,
build some audience and build some awareness and share the helpful information, and then, ask for something more, which is like throwing the hook. So hopefully that makes sense.
I love that. No, I
Maybe too many
appreciate that.
analogies there.
That
Yeah, that might
I
have been.
appreciate that boxing analogy. I've
Okay,
never heard
yeah.
that before.
Any way we can bring Mike
Uh,
Tyson into the conversation would be,
yeah,
I'm a fan
100%.
of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Hopefully, we see him in a fight again soon.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
he's coming
so
back.
yeah. Okay. One thing I didn't mention was just website, right? Like your website's still a good place to promote these lead magnets if it's done well. So we're just helping a client right now think through their new website design, and they have a great lead magnet that's more relevant to an earlier stage career person in their niche, and then they have a lead magnet that's more relevant to like a later stage career. And we're thinking through, okay, let's make sure we promote the earlier stage career lead magnet on the page where we talk directly to early stage career people. And then on the later stage career lead magnet, let's make sure we align that with the one where we're talking about they're our target audience. We want to make sure we align that on the persona pages. And then we can think about like the articles too that are still getting traction from Google, that are still getting some clicks, maybe we promote with small call to actions to get to the landing page to download as well. So your website's still a valuable tool to promote. I know we talked more about email and social, but it's still something to consider. Okay,
Yeah,
so
I look at
Stephen,
your
yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
one thought.
Go ahead.
I look at your website as your biggest marketing asset. So yeah, yeah, we got to start there. So no, I'm glad you added that back in. Okay, final thoughts.
Yeah, just final thoughts is just sorry to cut you off there. Just remember to set your expectations based on the offer itself. Like, don't think your conversions are going to automatically become discovery calls because that's just not the way it works. However, you put yourself in a better position, right, to build your audience, to nurture your audience, and be ready for when they're ready to engage with lead magnets. That's really the value of them. Most prospects are going to need a lot of touch points. But the valuable thing about a lead magnet is when you can get them in your system, right? You know how to follow up with them. You know that you can email them, and so you get that next level of marketing, where you can follow up, if that makes sense.
All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. If anybody's still watching, I'd be very impressed. But thank you for your attention as we went through this history of lead magnets and what to do if you're an RIA considering lead generation, organic lead generation. Yeah, would love for people to subscribe and like the podcast. That helps us out, and please consider sharing it if you know a colleague or a friend or another fellow business owner who would benefit from some of these topics. So thanks very much. Have a great week.